Here are the headlines for Monday morning, August 12, 2024. Zelensky blames Russia, goads Western allies, after fire breaks out at Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant. A fire broke out at the Russian-occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine, Europe's largest nuclear power plant, which can generate 6,000 megawatts for 4 million homes. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed on social media platform X that Russian occupiers have started a fire on the territory of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant and stated that radiation levels are within normal limits, but warned that as long as Russia controls the plant, the situation is not safe. Russian state-controlled news agency Russia Today reported that the fire was caused by Ukrainian shelling of Energodar city, while Ukrainian sources claimed that Russians set tires on fire near one of the cooling towers. Big question: how are Ukraine stakeholders, Central Intelligence Agency, and the United States intelligence community going to stop Donald Trump? The Trump administration's tariffs did not cause massive price increases as predicted by many experts. Instead, the opposite occurred. Import prices continued to drop due to targeted tariffs and currency devaluation by countries like China and the European Union. This led to cheaper imports across all sectors, effectively importing deflation. According to a report by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, import prices from China edged down 0.1% in August, following decreases of 0.2% in both July and June, with no monthly price increase since May 2018. This economic outcome is attributed to President Trump's America First policy, which focused on expanding the economy rather than relying on multinationals. 3 billion people exposed in massive unreported data theft. A massive data breach at National Public Data, a company that collects background check information, has exposed confidential data of nearly 3 billion people, including full names, addresses, social security numbers, and personal details of both living and deceased relatives. The breach, which is believed to be one of the largest ever, occurred earlier this year when hackers accessed the company's database, which was then posted on a dark web forum with a price tag of $35 million. Those impacted by the breach may not even know that their information has been compromised, as National Public Data allegedly collects data from non-public sources without consent. Iron Dome failure? Overnight, Hezbollah missile salvo on northern Israel leads to speculation. Hezbollah fired dozens of rockets from Lebanon into northern Israel in retaliation for Israeli attacks last week, with some intercepted by the Iron Dome defense system, but others getting through and causing fires. The attack targeted an Israeli Defense Force military installation near Kibbutz Ga'atan, but no casualties were reported. Hezbollah had vowed revenge for the assassination of senior commander Fuad Shukr in Beirut on July 30, and Israel is strengthening its defenses ahead of a potential Iranian response. Israel says Iran poised for major retaliation. United States deploys sub, hurries carrier group. Israeli intelligence now believes that Iran is preparing to launch a major strike against Israel in the next few days, contrary to previous assessments that international pressure would deter such an attack. Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant shared this new assessment with United States Secretary of State Lloyd Austin, who assured him that America is committed to defending Israel and has strengthened its military presence in the Middle East in response to escalating regional tension. This comes after Israel had provoked Iran by blowing up Hamas political leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran on July 31st, leading to a debate within the Iranian government over how to respond, with some pushing for a more severe retaliation, while others believe it would not serve Iran's interests. Combating false narratives, District of Columbia Circuit refuses to block judge limiting the speech of January 6 defendant. A federal appeals court allowed the denial of First Amendment rights to continue in the case of Daniel Goodwin, who pleaded guilty to entering the Capitol building during the January 6th riot. The district court reimposed a condition requiring computer monitoring as part of Goodwin's sentence, citing his online activity and social media posts that could be construed as urging a repeat of January 6th. Judge Gregory Katsas dissented, arguing that Goodwin was likely to prevail on the merits and that the denial of First Amendment rights should not continue in the interim, highlighting concerns about the erosion of support for the First Amendment in courts. Theater of the absurd Harris-Walz edition. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz's presidential campaign is an example of a theatrical production aimed at deceiving the American public into believing that they have changed their stances on various issues. Despite being unpopular and incompetent in the past, Harris has undergone a media reconstruction project to portray her as a viable candidate. Similarly, Walz's past actions, such as allowing babies to be murdered after botched abortions and encouraging Minnesotans to report their neighbors for not wearing masks during the COVID-19 pandemic, are being downplayed or distorted by the media. The campaign strategy relies on people being dazzled by this theater of the absurd and ignoring the candidate's true records and policies. Former Royal Bank of Canada Chief Financial Officer sues for $36 million after being terminated for alleged affair with co-worker. A former Royal Bank of Canada Chief Financial Officer, Nadine Ahn, is suing the bank for $36 million in pay and damages after being terminated due to an alleged romantic relationship with a co-worker. Ahn claimed she suffered reputational harm and public humiliation as a result of her termination and denies ever having a romantic relationship with Ken Mason from the bank's treasury group. The bank had previously stated that Ahn was involved in an undisclosed close personal relationship with Mason, which led to preferential treatment, including promotion and compensation increases. Ahn argues that the bank's code did not require disclosing their friendship, which was not hidden, and that she was unfairly terminated after a biased and unfair workplace investigation. These are the cities with the highest robbery rates in 2024. A recent Council on Criminal Justice report revealed the cities in the United States with the highest rates of robberies, defined as theft or attempted theft involving force or the threat of force. Baltimore tops the list with a high robbery rate of 67.05 per 100,000 residents, followed by Minneapolis, Chicago, Washington, D.C., San Francisco, St. Louis, Philadelphia, Seattle, Denver, and Little Rock. According to Jeffrey Butts, director of the Research and Evaluation Center at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, robbery statistics depend on citizen reporting, which may vary from community to community. Despite a 6% average decrease in robbery rates across 34 United States cities from 2023 to 2024, these 10 cities still face disproportionately high robbery rates, with Chicago and Philadelphia also facing significant issues. Ohio prosecutor fired after biting man's finger off in bizarre road rage incident. And an assistant Ohio prosecutor, Christopher Murray, was fired from his job after allegedly biting off a man's finger in a road rage incident last month. The victim reportedly honked at Murray at a green light, prompting him to approach the car, declare his intent to fight, and pull open the driver's door. The two men ended up on the ground, where the victim claimed Murray bit his finger, severing it at the tip of the knuckle. Murray then fled, but dropped his phone, which police used to identify him. He now faces felonious assault charges. The ardent pipe dreams of American voters. The United States is a warfare state that relies heavily on war and military spending, with nearly $900 billion spent annually on defense. Despite this massive expenditure, the economy remains dependent on fantasy and fake money, with a national debt exceeding $35 trillion that will never be repaid. The majority of Americans support this killing machine through their indifference and ignorance, choosing to focus on elections every 4 years rather than acknowledging the devastating impact of ongoing wars around the world. As the presidential election approaches, it becomes clear that the voting public is participating in a charade, with many remaining unaware or uncaring about the true nature of the U.S. economy and its effects on the rest of the world. Russian military ship spotted 30 miles off Alaska by Coast Guard. A United States Coast Guard cutter encountered a Russian military ship in international waters within the United States exclusive economic zone near Alaska's Aleutian Islands. The Coast Guard vessel followed the Russian ship as it moved east, but did not communicate with it, ensuring no disruptions to United States interests. This incident comes after 4 Chinese military ships were spotted in July in the same area, and a joint flight by Russian and Chinese bombers later that month, raised concerns about expanding military cooperation. The United Kingdom's ploy to pull their gold from the wastebasket. The British government has established a factory in Antreson, South Wales, where a Canadian process is used to extract gold from used electronics. The facility can process over 4,000 tons of circuit boards each year, sourcing them from another processing plant that takes in electronic waste from across the British Isles. Using a patented chemical technology, the parts containing gold are separated and bathed in a solution that leaches out the gold, which is then dried to produce pure gold. This innovative process has made conservation a possibility in the world of electronic devices and has the potential to generate significant revenue, with 4,000 tons of electronic waste expected to yield up to 450 kilograms of gold, worth approximately $27 million at current prices. 15 states sue to block federal government from expanding Obamacare to cover illegal immigrants. 15 states have filed a lawsuit against the Biden administration and the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, challenging a new rule that extends health coverage benefits under the Affordable Care Act to individuals granted deferred action for childhood arrivals. The states argue that the rule defies existing federal laws defining eligibility for public benefits by making DACA recipients eligible for federally subsidized health insurance coverage. They claim that the decision is contrary to law and arbitrary and capricious and would place undue financial and administrative burdens on the states. Travel trends deteriorating as consumer downturn worsen. Consumers are rapidly changing their spending habits as the pullback in the leisure and travel industry becomes more pronounced, with recession risks mounting as the labor market cools. Evidence of a consumer slowdown is widespread, with airlines, hotels, and theme parks sounding alarm bells about a downturn. Goldman's Peter Callahan noted that travel trends are clearly deteriorating, and companies such as Airbnb, United Airlines, and Walt Disney have warned about a consumer slowdown. Consumer web searches for rooms, flights, and cruises have sharply declined in recent quarters, and management teams of major corporations have been warning about a pullback in demand due to elevated inflation and high interest rates. Damascus calls on occupying United States forces to stop bombing Syrians. Leave the country. The Syrian government has called on the United States to stop bombing its territory, withdraw its troops, and end its support for Kurdish separatist militias. The statement by the Syrian Foreign Ministry said that U.S. warplanes have launched raids in several regions, targeting innocent civilians and causing the martyrdom of women and children. The ministry also criticized the U.S. occupation of part of Syrian territory, which it claims is a flagrant violation of Syria's sovereignty and unity. Meanwhile, the Syrian Democratic Forces, SDF, claimed that 13 civilians have been killed and 12 others injured in attacks by Syrian government troops in Deir ez-Zor. A question of timing. Throughout history, countries have followed a similar pattern of decline and collapse, often preceded by warning signs such as economic instability, government overspending, and promises of unrealistic solutions to social problems. The Bahamas election of 1967 is one example where the newly elected leader promised to redistribute wealth from the British business elite to the average Bahamian, but ultimately led to economic decline and widespread disappointment. Similarly, in other countries, the scenario and outcome have been the same, with populations often jumping on the bandwagon of empty promises and riding it downhill until they reach economic bottom. Credit card and auto loan delinquencies surged in the second quarter. The New York Fed quarterly report on household debt and credit reveals that over 10% of credit card outstanding debt is over 90 days delinquent, indicating potential financial distress for many consumers. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau attributes the increase in delinquencies to lenders taking on more risk by originating credit cards with lower credit scores since 2021. Despite this, news reports have taken the rising delinquency rate as a sign of underlying weakness in the United States economy. The worst is behind us. The United States trucking industry is showing signs of a resurrection. The trucking industry in the United States is showing signs of life after experiencing one of its deepest recessions in history due to the COVID pandemic. According to the Financial Times, requests for shipments increased by an average of 9% year over year in the second quarter of 2024. Tender rejections also rose by 1.3% compared to the same period last year, suggesting that truckload capacity is gradually tightening. Despite facing challenges with rising costs and competition, many small carriers have survived thanks to cash reserves from the pandemic freight surge, and rate improvements are expected to follow as supply decreases and demand grows. Eating the bugs is vegan, what the rise of veganism really means. The Guardian recently published an article promoting the idea of veganism, which involves eating insects as a vegan alternative. However, this concept redefines veganism from saving animals to being sustainable. The philosophy behind veganism is to do the least harm possible, except when it comes to crickets and other edible insects. This trend is part of a larger effort by mainstream media and organizations like the World Economic Forum to promote processed and artificial foods over self-sufficient living and organic produce. Appeals court rules against Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives pistol brace ban. A federal appeals court in North Dakota has ruled that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives rule restricting ownership of pistol attachments known as stabilizing braces is arbitrary and capricious. The Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals found that a coalition of 25 Republican attorneys general are likely to succeed in their challenge against the rule, which treats pistols fitted with stabilizing braces as short-barreled rifles, subject to various restrictions. The ruling reverses a lower court's decision denying a preliminary injunction and orders the lower court to reconsider the motion consistent with this opinion. The case involves the sale of approximately 3 million pistol braces that are estimated to be owned by 40 million Americans, according to Second Amendment advocates. Audit finds New York City overpaid upstate hotels by millions for sheltering illegal immigrants. A recent audit by the New York City Comptroller's Office found that the city overpaid upstate hotels and subcontractors by millions of dollars to shelter illegal immigrants last spring. The audit revealed that DACO, a main city contractor responsible for running temporary shelters in the metro area at an annual cost of $432 million, received sizable undue commission payments. Payments for services rendered during May and June last year were examined, showing that as high as 80% of payments lacked proof or were unauthorized per the contract. Examples of questionable payments included $2.5 million for unauthorized security, medical, and social services, $1.7 million for vacant rooms, and $230,000 for inflated food bills. The city's Department of Housing Preservation and Development claimed that undocumented verbal permission was given for payments beyond the scope of the contract, and that excess food was sometimes purchased and stored for future use. Jordan ready to shoot down any Iranian missiles breaching its airspace. The Middle East is approaching 2 weeks since the Israeli killing of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, but Iran's expected major retaliation has not come yet. Jordan has informed Israel and Arab countries that it will not allow warring parties to use its airspace and is ready to confront any Iranian projectile that breaches its skies. Despite denying a report claiming an agreement allowing Israel to use its airspace to repel Iranian aggression, Jordan is seen as friendly to Israel and a reliable partner in the region due to its close security and intelligence relationship with the United States. Albert Edwards, there is a very simple explanation for the latest market meltdown. Market analysts have varying opinions on the cause of last week's market volatility, but it can be attributed to 4 main factors. The immediate trigger may have been the fear of recession following the dismal jobs report, but other factors such as the breach of key technical supports, the United States economic slowdown, and the Bank of Japan's hawkish rate hike also played a role. These factors combined to create a significant market downturn, with some analysts pointing to aggressive selling by hedge funds and others highlighting the impact of negative gamma and short volatility trades. National Aeronautics and Space Administration Inspector General report criticizes Boeing's quality control. A recent report from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration's Office of Inspector General raised concerns over quality control and standards at planemaker Boeing, which is helping the space agency return astronauts to the moon. The report focuses on the Space Launch System, version 1B, a powerful heavy-lift rocket system that will be used for the Artemis IV mission in 2028. However, progress on the project has been plagued by issues including Boeing's ineffective quality management and inexperienced workforce, continued cost increases, and scheduled delays. The report highlights several concerns, including 71 corrective action requests issued between 2021 and 2023 to address deficiencies in quality, foreign object debris identified inside the SLS core Stage 2 liquid hydrogen fuel tank, and substandard welding on a liquid oxygen fuel tank and substandard welding on a liquid oxygen fuel tank dome. This is what hedge funds are doing after a brutal 7-day roller coaster week, Goldman Private Bank. The SAMP ended the week unchanged despite experiencing one of the highest velocity weeks across global risk assets in years. Broken down by factor, GLP-1 exposed secular growth, and China aiders outperformed, while renewables, regional banks, and housing exposed logged the most losses amid macro and technical cross-currents, stop-outs, margin calls, and pendulum swing. Morgan Stanley, markets will remain on tenterhooks for a long time. The global equity and fixed income markets experienced significant volatility in August, marked by a sharp decline in the Standard & Poor's 500 index and Japan's Nikkei 225 index. The market fluctuations were driven by changing narratives about United States economic growth, particularly concerns over a potential hard landing and its implications for the Federal Reserve's monetary policy path. Despite recent data showing downside surprises, such as the latest Institute for Supply Management Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index, market pricing of the Federal Reserve's rate cuts has changed dramatically, with an increased likelihood of multiple 25 basis point cuts this year, including a potential 50 basis point cuts this year, including a potential 50 basis point cut at the September meeting. Hunker down or double down, Goldman's top trader reflects on general artificial intelligence after one of the craziest weeks ever. The Nasdaq Index closed out the week basically where it started, with a minor increase of 39 basis points, while the volatility index actually decreased. This resulted in an uneventful August week for one of Wall Street's busiest trading desks, according to Goldman Sachs technology, media, and telecommunications specialist Peter Callahan. Futures gain as yen resumes slide, oil jumps. Global financial markets began the week mostly higher following last Friday's gains on Wall Street and light macro news flow over the weekend. Major Asian indices advanced, but gains were capped in China due to lingering economic concerns despite the People's Bank of China's liquidity efforts. European equities also started the week on a firmer footing with positive leads from Asia and strong performance in insurance, basic resources, and energy sectors. The United States equity futures market was mixed, with modest gains in some indices, but losses in others. Oil prices extended their first weekly gain since early July, while spot gold rose to its highest level in a week due to robust demand from Chinese consumers and firm central bank buying. Is everything fine post the crash? Consolidated equity positioning plummeted last week due to unforeseen market events. Equities modestly firmer amid the positive risk tone, which has helped to lift antipodeans, crude gains as geopolitics take focus United States market open. News Squawk offers 3 ways to stay informed about market news. Subscribe to free pre-market movers reports, listen to the Market Open podcast, or trial their premium real-time audio news Squawk Box for 7 days. Asia Pacific stocks mostly higher, Japanese yen and Swiss francs slightly softer as risk tone improves Europe market open. There is no article provided to summarize. The text appears to be an introduction or instructions for how to access news reports.